it's interesting. You can almost see the two sides of their team thinking about that when the centre-backs have the ball and the central midfielders, they seem to take that more conservative approach, play it back. But as soon as you get the ball at the feet of one of Politano, Osimhen or Kvaratskhelia, you can see all they want to do is just pick it up and drive towards goal. They want to add numbers to their tallies for this season, and they want to prove that they are among Europe's elite, and it's a good combination to have because it's going to allow for that conservative approach when it's needed, but also allow for some entertaining football and a chance for Napoli to really prove a point by winning both of these legs comfortably if they can. But at the moment, Frankfurt are holding firm enough, you would say, as the ball loops over the top and Kevin Trapp just rolls it out to his centre-back in Tuta. Into Roda, back to Tuta, long ball over the top, cleared away by Napoli, and it's into the feet of Lobotka. He plays it out to the left-hand side. That's lovely from Kvaratskhelia, who just skips away from a tackle and plays it infield. He looks so hard to dispossess. And the ball now on the right-hand side with Di Lorenzo in towards Zambo and Guisa. Napoli just happy to hold on to that ball. Zambo and Guisa again, fires it into Osimhen. Not really had the best first touch, but done really well to skip away nonetheless from Ndika. Then across comes a big tackle from Christopher Lenz, and an illegal one, says Anthony Taylor. Free kick.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was just a slight advantage being played and then nothing came with for Osimhen, so he brought it back in the end. It's much to the frustration in the end of the Frankfurt defence. I mean, he gets a good chunk of the ball, doesn't he? Maybe leaves a little bit on Osimhen in the end. But neither team are shirking from tackles, are they? Both trying to win the ball themselves. You said it, that with Napoli being happy to pass it around the back, and then Frankfurt and Oliver Glasner doesn't know when to press and when not to, but they're certainly throwing their weight around in the middle of the park when the ball is up for grabs. And there's going to be a free kick for Napoli, as we said, with Victor Osimhen going down. Been very few stoppages, hasn't there? The ball has been in play quite a fair bit, with each team trying to make their mark on possession. So a chance from a dead ball situation again. Zielinski and Politano over it. Yeah, chance to loft one into the area. It looks like it's going to be Zielinski as Politano is just walking away from the ball a bit. Yeah, it certainly won't be him. Zielinski in swinging cross in towards the area. There's a head on it. I think it was Anguissa that got his head on it, but it was looping away from goal always. Kamado picked it up well, and now Knopf has the ball down the left-hand side, goes down under a tackle, and that's going to be a soft free kick for Frankfurt as there's a wag of the finger from Romani, who seems to think that he hadn't fouled Angsar Nolf, but free kick anyway. Yeah, and fortunately for Frankfurt, it's just going to slow down what is a slowly growing in confidence Napoli, growing in threat on the visitors' defence, and it gives Oliver Glasner's team a chance to just get some possession.
Yeah, it certainly does, and it takes us past the halfway point in this first half, and it's Napoli 0, Frankfurt 0 so far to take through to half-time. I'll pass you on to Ben.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, there's not really been too many serious indications as there of either team breaking the deadlock, but Napoli won't mind that one bit, will they? Of course, a draw would still see them through to the Champions League quarter-finals, and of course, they've only lost 3 matches all season in all competitions, and if you're to be extra pedantic, then one of those was against Liverpool when they were already guaranteed to finish first in their Champions League group. Their other 2 defeats have come against the teams placed 2nd and 3rd in Serie A, but they're not under threat from the likes of Inter or Lazio. 18 points clear in the Serie A league table. Almost seems certain, doesn't it, that they'll be earning their first Scudetto for the first time since 1990, from the days of Diego Maradona, a stadium of which is now named after the Argentine legend, and so much so the performances of some players, namely Kvaratskhelia, has been given a nickname after the great man himself. And what player he has been this season, Kvaratskhelia, alongside so many. Credit all across the park, including Luciano Spalletti. He's given many praises to his Korean defender Kim Min-jae, who's on the ball now into Mario Rui. Sends it long for Osimhen, who's found some space between midfield and defence. Sebastian Roeder's getting in the way though and finds Kevin Ndika. Roeder will get it back and got Kamada ahead of him. Good intended through ball, trying to find Rafael Borre, but Di Lorenzo does well to intercept and give it back into the feet of the hosts. They're going to try and press a bit of Frankfurt. Borre and Mario Goetze playing in that number 10 role behind the Argentine striker, but it's his opposite number, Victor Osimhen, that goes down on the halfway line to earn Napoli a free kick awarded by Anthony Taylor. Seems that whenever Victor Osimhen gets the ball, and with good reason, the Frankfurt defence, as I just say that, it's been too much in the eyes of Anthony Taylor. Kevin Ndika goes into the book as the first yellow card of the evening, which sort of plays into my point really, because Osimhen hasn't found too much space, has he? As soon as he gets the ball, the defence has been so tight on them, and in the eyes of Anthony Taylor, a bit too tight from Ndika there.
Yeah, they're trying to get close to him, aren't they? They don't want him to play. I think they know that when he drops in, it allows Kvaratskhelia and Politano to run off him, and he's obviously so dangerous when he gets the ball himself, Osimhen. So they're doing the right thing in getting close. Maybe that time he's taken a step too far, and DK, he's put his arm across the face of the big striker. I think it was a bit of a soft yellow card in my opinion, but like you say, they've been doing it so far the whole game, and maybe Anthony Taylor's realised there, look, that one's crossed a bit of a line and you've done it enough times, so he's going to give the first yellow card. It's one I'd watch out for, though. We might see a couple more of that back line getting cards in this game.
Yeah, especially, I mean, we were thinking before the game that Victor Osimhen would be targeted by the Frankfurt defence, but it's on the flip side now, isn't it, that Kevin Ndika could be targeted by the Napoli attack in trying to punish the Frankfurt defender with a second yellow card. As we just see the possession working in favour of the Italians at the moment, 61% compared to Frankfurt's 39. Osimhen's going to chase this loose ball down all the way to Kevin Trapp, who thumps it as high and far as he can. Good layoff in the end from Raphael Borre. Under pressure from Rahmani. He finds Daichi Kamada now into the captain, Roda. Mario Goetze's found some space in between midfield and defence, but they play it safe and go into Sal. That's a good flick on from Goetze, and it brings in the Mbuta into play. Can he find a teammate on the end of it? Nearly comes onto the head of Daichi Kamada. He might have wanted it in front of him, but it was pulled back in the end all the way past every Frankfurt player, and Napoli can bring it forward instead on an attempted counter. Here's Matteo Politano under pressure from Sau. So we'll go back to Napoli's captain in Di Lorenzo. Politano again off of Zambo Anguissa, tries to get around Lens in the end, and eventually goes out for a throw in. Raphael Borre leaving it for Oliver Glasner's men. There's a round of applause in there from Oliver Glasner, because they sort of stalled the Napoli counter in the end. It was another encouraging attacking move from Frankfurt, wasn't it? It's what we saw in the opening 10 minutes on 2 or 3 occasions. A bit of a lull in their attacking intent since, but it was a good flick on from Goetze in the end round the corner. And in the end, the cross was just lacking, because there were a good few players in the end in the box for Frankfurt. Yeah,
there was 3 options. They were all making a very similar run, and it's just played slightly too high and slightly too far behind them, and it allowed Napoli to come out. It all comes from that flick, as you say, from Mario Goetze, and that's what they need. Just someone in that pocket to just be making those little passes around the corner, and they'll be able to cut Napoli open as they try and come forward here again.
Yeah, on the left side this time, going to the right with Raphael Borre. He's got a chance to shoot at goal here on the edge of the area. Opted not to. Maybe the wrong decision in the end, because it gave Mario Rui time to dispossess him and earn Napoli a throw-in inside their own half. As we do edge towards the 30-minute stage, independent off-tube studio commentary, Napoli 0, Eintracht Frankfurt 0, still goalless as well in the game at the Santiago Bernabeu between Real Madrid and Liverpool. So as it stands, that does remain 5-2 on aggregate in favour of Carlo Ancelotti's men. Half-time in the 2 Premier League matches. Brighton 1 up against their rivals Crystal Palace. Southampton losing at home to Brentford. So as it stands, 2 teams that are battling in the relegation fight, 2 of 9. This is quite remarkable, isn't it, this season, Josh? The amount of teams that are having to battle to avoid the drop to the Championship, and well, all the other 7 teams that aren't playing in this midweek will be delighted to see that Palace and Southampton are losing. But our full focus is on this game between Napoli and Frankfurt. Politano asking for a free kick there under pressure from Christopher Lenz. Anthony Taylor's not going to give it, and Sau can bring it forward for Frankfurt. Further on to the right-hand side for Buta. Another chance to get a ball in. In his opinion, hopefully better than the last one. He finds Tuta, who goes further inside to Sau. Buta will get it back, and a chance to whip it in to the penalty spot. Nearly comes to the feet of Raphael Borre. I've seen quite a bit of the ball recently. He's throwing his weight around, just shoving over Mario Rui in the end. So that won't bother Napoli one bit. Again, just taking the sting out of a Frankfurt attack that, to their credit, is slowly growing.
Yeah, it certainly is. I was just thinking, we've sort of seen the best pieces of possession inside the opposition half we've seen so far from Frankfurt. They're finding pockets down that right-hand side. They've not really got much to offer centrally. They're trying to drift into those wide positions, and I think that's because they've seen that Di Lorenzo and Rui are trying to push up for Napoli when they get the ball and make attacking options, so they're managing to drift into those spaces. I think they're 1 pass away from being able to get a shot on goal here, but at the moment they're just not quite doing it. Oh, that could be it, though.
That could be the pass. What a ball that is from Daichi Kamada, and in the end, the 2 attackers, Mario Goetze and Raphael Borre, they were all a bit too selfless each other in the end, weren't they? They were saying, leave it, I'll let you have that one. And then in the end, it goes comfortably into the hands of Alex Mere. What a let-off for Napoli in the end. There was a huge gap in the defence. But even still, it required a brilliant ball, which Daichi Kamada gave. And in the end, you've just got to look at the blame for, well, who do you blame in the end, Goetze or Rafael Borre? Because either of them could have taken the shot, but in the end, they both hesitated.
Yeah, one of them's just got to take that moment for their own. I think maybe you've got to blame Borre as a striker. He's got to be the man that says, this is my ball, I'm going to hit it. But what a pass it is from Kamada, just as we get our second yellow card of the game. Anthony Taylor not shy on bringing the cards out in this game so far. So Christopher Lenz, we just said 5 minutes ago, we might see a few more of the back line from Frankfurt getting in the book. We now have Evan Ndika and Christopher Lenz both on yellow cards.
Well, there you go. It's 50% of the Frankfurt defence at the moment, isn't it? Each being on that left side of defence, switch the right side of Napoli's attack and try and punish Victor Osimhen. Certainly vocal in wanting a yellow card given by Anthony Taylor there, which he duly delivered. As for Frankfurt, we've said that they are growing in this game, aren't they? And they really do need a victory, not only to try and remain in this campaign of the Champions League, but just trying to get out of a rut of their form at the moment. They haven't won an away game in any competition since November. Home or away, they're winless in the last 4 games, a 1-1 draw against Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, their last outing. But to their credit, in the group stage, 2 of their 3 away matches did end in victories, so certainly isn't out of the question yet that the German outfit can try and produce a comeback in Naples. Throw into Napoli inside Frankfurt's own half. Mario Rui goes over to take this one. Kvaratskhelia and Zielinski, the short options, but play it safe and go back to Kim Min-jae. And as we've said, they're so happy to just pass it between defence and goalkeeper. So far, at least as the scoreline suggests, the 2-goal advantage for the Italians isn't as a threat, but Frankfurt are certainly knocking on the door. Here's Lobotka. Good first touch in the end from Kim Min-jae. A wayward ball could have found any number of Frankfurt attackers. Goetze and Borre, and now Sau trying to press onto Zielinski. He tries to get it into Kvaratskhelia, but it falls loose, and the visitors will pick up the pieces again and go all the way back to Kevin Trapp now. Victor Osimhen pressing the German goalkeeper. He'll go to the right side of his defence, further forward now for Goetze. Good first touch from him, out wide now to Buta. Further down the line, the flick on doesn't work in the end. It's a slowed pace now, isn't it, really, in these last few minutes? We said that maybe all it takes is a good ball, which we saw from Daichi Kamada. But both teams in the last minute or so just giving away possession so easily.
Yeah, certainly are. I think Frankfurt have given away the possession too easily throughout the entire game, especially when they've been in dangerous positions. They've just lacked that final pass that's not really been able to create opportunities. I think Napoli, maybe as they've seen Frankfurt step onto them a bit, have decided that they just want to sit back and just be comfortable on the ball. As you said, that they're more than happy to see this game out as a draw or even as a 1-0 loss. I'm sure they don't want to lose the game, but as you say, it's not something that that they would hate, in that it would still see them going through to the last 8 of the competition. So it's just had a bit of an era of both teams being a bit too careful, maybe. Neither wants to give up the chase. I don't think Napoli want to give up the fact that that they can sit on this. I don't think Frankfurt really want to go 3-0 down, because then it really would be out of their reach. I think the next goal, or the first goal rather, in this game is really going to decide which direction this game goes in. If it comes from Frankfurt, I think we're in for a really thrilling evening. Yeah,
you used the word careful there for both teams. I think you're spot on, especially for Frankfurt. Of course, their immediate priority will lie in trying to get back on level terms on the aggregate scoreline, but at least to their credit, Oliver Glasner's men, they've managed to keep Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen largely out of the game. On the flip side, you could say they're not really needing to get out of second gear, but the threat really does lie there, doesn't it? Especially for Kvaratskhelia. He now averages a direct goal contribution in every game, one in each match. 13 goals scored, 15 assists for the Georgian winger. As Oliver Glasner just trying to get in Anthony Taylor's head, asking for a few free kicks, which you'd imagine it so often happens, doesn't it, when some yellow cards are thrown out early in the game. It sort of invites the persecuted team, if you want to call it that, to try and say, well, if you're giving yellow cards to us for that, then try and get into Anthony Taylor's head and influence the game in their favour against Napoli, and need everything on their side, won't they, as we're already over a third into this game, still goalless. Frankfurt needing 2 goals at the very least to take this game to extra time. Of course, away goals rules don't count in UEFA competitions anymore. Napoli scoring twice in Frankfurt. The visitors for the second leg will need to turn the favour there at the very least to go beyond the 90 minutes. Here's Ndika now on a yellow card, as is Christopher Lenz, two of the Frankfurt players in defence. They play it forward now to Sau, out wide to Buta. He's got some space to run into ahead of Kavica Kvaratskhelia. Further right now is Tuta. Knaufer, should say, in the end, the right winger. We haven't really mentioned him too much in the end. The main threat of attack for Frankfurt has come mainly on the other three of this 4-2-3-1 formation. Mario Goethe, Daichi Kamada and Raphael Borre. Always difficult, isn't it, to be a lone striker, especially away from home against such a watertight defence like Napoli. Napoli have only conceded 6 goals in the entirety of the Champions League campaign this season. As for Serie A, only 16 goals conceded, the best defence in Italy, so they really do have their work cut out, don't they? Oliver Glasner's men, they're trying to come forward here and dispossess Politano, which they did, at least in their opinion, to good effect. A combination of Christopher Lenz and Mario Goetze snatching the ball off of Politano's feet, but in the end the Napoli number 21s blushes the spared because Anthony Taylor gives him a free kick, and if he hadn't, Frankfurt could have threatened. They
certainly would have been able to, wouldn't they? They were right up the other end, they were causing problems, and they won it back in a pretty dangerous position high up the pitch. I think Anthony Taylor's been, I've got to admit, quite strict in this game. I think he's given 2 yellow cards for incidents that on another day or different referees maybe wouldn't have punished to that extent, and I'm really not sure that that one was a free kick either. But if you're going to referee it that way, at least you're refereeing it consistently, which is what he's been doing so far.
Yeah, it might bring a bit more fire into Frankfurt, being riled up by those decisions. Lobotka under pressure again from Mario Goetze. Good pressing from the visitors as Kim Min-jae nearly gets dispossessed in the end by Raphael Borre. The Korean defender makes up for it in the end, but as we were just saying, the pressing from the visitors has been absolutely spot on, nearly catching out Napoli on a few occasions in these last few minutes, and had Kim Min-jae not recovered there, Raphael Borre could have been in to open the deadlock, but instead Napoli can try and come forward now with Kvaratskhelia. That's a great tackle in the end by Tuta to send it out for a Frankfurt throw-in inside Napoli's half. They've taken it quickly, but they'll go round to defence. A defence that was nearly caught out again.
Yeah, they were just playing around with the ball too much in the back. The press was brilliant from Frankfurt. They just end up surrounding all the defenders, and they're almost pulled in towards the right corner flag. They then play a pass back in towards the box, which essentially was just to then get clear, but they just dwelled on it a little bit too long, and you could just see Goetze and Borre just trying to sprint to whoever had the ball just to put a little bit of pressure on it. Very much almost worked, but Kim Min-jae just about got away with it in the end. But they just got to be careful because Frankfurt's press has been really impressive over the last 10 minutes or so. I think over in the first half we saw a couple of opportunities, first half of this half rather, we saw a couple of times where Napoli did well to play out of it, but they've just been a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit maybe too overconfident, and it's allowed Frankfurt to just put them in a bit of pressure. You feel that the scales are tilting in Frankfurt's favour in this game, but a Napoli goal just kills that.
Yeah, it's difficult to read, isn't it, whether it's sort of complacency or nerves settling in for Napoli. They do have a 2-goal cushion, but 1 goal for Frankfurt, and all of a sudden the tie is thrown wide open. If the goal was to come for Napoli, as you say, it might mean the end of the tie. The press coming in again from Frankfurt. Roeder going down on Lobotka in the end, and he did win the ball, but Lobotka landed awkwardly in the end in the centre of the circle, so Ruiz kicked the ball out to stop proceedings. As we just see a replay again, Raphael Borre so nearly getting past Kim Min-jae in the end, and had he done that, Borre was in the 6-yard area and one-on-one with Alex Mere. But I think we have got to give credit there to Kim Min-jae. I mean, we can be critical of his miscontrol, and so often maybe with defenders sometimes they'll panic and really throw their bodies in and maybe even risk giving a penalty away. But Kim Min-jae, to his credit, he stayed calm and won the ball back well.
Yeah, he did really well. He made himself a problem, didn't he? And that's all you have to do in that situation. Don't dive in and cause the issue to be you, but rather make yourself still an issue, get your body in the way, make it difficult for Borre in that situation. And he's managed to do it really well, like you say. Just trying to get that ball up high up the pitch, Frankfurt. As you say, once again, this free kick, or this incident that we're now seeing in the middle of the park with, luckily, Lobotka back to his feet, is coming from that press. They're trying to be the first to every ball, Frankfurt. you just feel like it's just on the edge of it. I know I keep saying it, but I'm having this feeling that Frankfurt are going to score. But I just look at Napoli's side and you think, if they just commit too many men forward now, Frankfurt, that front three of Osimhen, Politano and Kvaratskhelia for Napoli could just catch them so easily on the break.
Yeah, it's bubbling, isn't it, the game? You can see that there must be a goal coming soon, but you're not really too sure on what team it could be, because for all the intents and purposes of Frankfurt at the moment, all of their pressing and attacking endeavour, as you say, it could so easily go the other way. Napoli go on the counter and just kill this game off. 4 minutes left in the first half. Still Napoli 0, Frankfurt 0. Ball back rolling again after Lobotka went down and required the treatment of the physios. The Frankfurt press again paying off with Roda picking up the pieces, but a poor ball gifts it straight back to the hosts. Now with Di Lorenzo again just passing it around the back, willing Frankfurt to continue their press and perhaps then pouncing when they commit too many men forward. Mario Rui's gone all the way up the left wing, trying to win the ball over the head of Tuta. He won't, but it'll still fall at the feet of the host with Kim Min-jae. Now Zielinski does well to get around the challenge of Buta, and he's got some space to run into now with Mario Rui on the left. Kvaratskhelia further ahead of him, a chance for the Georgians to get his strike away in the end. What a save by Kevin Trapp in the end. It was low and nearly caught out the Frankfurt keeper, but he read it well and he made himself big, avoided the risk of the ball going through his legs, and in the end using some great reactions with his feet. As we only just said, you nearly predicted it, didn't you, Josh, that with Leverkusen knocking at the door, it wouldn't take much for Napoli to come forward. There's a bit of brilliant midfield play from Zielinski to cut through the Frankfurt midfield, and then a good ball into the feet of Kvaratskhelia, and so nearly a goal that could have killed the tie off.
Yeah, it's the best effort we've seen so far, isn't it? The pass is wonderful into him, and he does really well to get it under his feet, Kvaratskhelia, and managed to get the shot away. He's just too close in the end to the goalkeeper to be able to put it anywhere in terms of a corner. He just has to almost swipe it, and Kevin Trapp does well to get his body in the way and knock it away for a corner. But they're just so dangerous on that counter-attack. But yeah, really good goalkeeping. I think he's done well, Trapp, to be alert to that pass coming through.
Yeah, the defence will really have to be at their best to prevent a free flow in Napoli, as we've seen throughout this entire campaign. The corner will be taken by Matteo Politano. Everyone in the 6-yard area, as Kevin Trapp does well to punch it in the end. It was a combination of Rahmani and Kim Min-jae in the end that were trying to put the squeeze on the German goalkeeper, but he read it well and punched it straight back where it came from for another Napoli corner. Again, Zielinski and Politano over it. You'd imagine it'll be the Italian winger again, which it is, to swing it into the same area. Again punched away by Kevin Trapp. Anthony Taylor allowing the German keeper to earn a free kick for the visitors. Kim Min-jae again just being a presence, really. There's not too much in it on the end. I think the incident in the end comes from Rafael Borre, doesn't it, at the near post as he tried to clear it away. A little nudge from a Napoli man. And Frankfurt in the end just get away from the Neapolitan pressure that has been growing in these last 2 minutes, as the visitors will try and come forward. Now only 1 minute left of regulation time in this first half, before we find out how many minutes will be added on by the fourth official. Can Frankfurt end it on a high as the ball tries to find Rafael Borre? Again well intercepted by Kim Min-jae, imperious as ever in the back line of Luciano Spalletti's men. Kamada. Now Mario Goethe, who's dropped deep. He's found Sau in a bit of space, who goes out right looking for Knauf. Got Mario Rui for company. A chance for the Frankfurt number 36 to run inwards and find Kamada. No, he looked further left for Christopher Jens, and then the Frankfurt fullback, he tried to win the ball, didn't he? It was well read by Di Lorenzo to intercept it, and well, if anything, Di Lorenzo just runs into the knee of Lenz, and he'll earn Napoli a free kick, just again to stunt Frankfurt growing.
Yeah, I think if there was one way I could describe Anthony Taylor's refereeing so far today, it would be naive. I think he's fallen for a few over-exaggerative, shall we say, welcomings to tackles from a few players, and he sort of stopped the flow of the game at times. I think Frankfurt were really putting some pressure on there, and it was really good to get into that space. A bit of a poor touch, and it allowed Napoli to come away. Here they are again, though. Space
is opening up for them. 2 minutes of added time as Di Lorenzo lost it to the back post, looking for Zielinski. Well read by the Frankfurt captain, Sebastian Roda, to clear it as far as he can. Only as far, though, as Mario Rui. Roda's raced all the way over to charge down the Portuguese fullback. And Napoli take it back into defence. So, as I said, only 2 minutes awarded by the fourth official. Napoli trying to get the third of the aggregate tie, the first of the night, as the first half comes to an inevitable close. Throw into Frankfurt inside their own half. Christopher Lenz just being stopped for a second by Anthony Taylor, who's been, as you say, he's had a busy half, hasn't he? The English referee, not only in dishing out those 2 yellow cards to the Frankfurt defence, but maybe misreading some of the challenges, giving some free kicks that, much to the team that fouled them, would be in disagreement. As the ball forward, looking for Zambo and Geese, it'll come to Lobotka. Good ball, he's poked out wide to Politano. Right of the goal as he lofts it to the back signal for Osimhen, and what a header that is in the end from the Nigerian striker. What a nonchalant celebration as well, as he just takes off of his mask. Little nod of the head as he goes over to embrace Kvaratskhelia, but the space was there on the right flank for Politano to loft it into the back post. The Frankfurt defence was just at a standstill. It was all in slow motion in the end, as was the header as he sent it back where the cross came from. Kevin Trapp was never going to be able to reach it. It looped over his head and into the top corner. And as we were just saying, right before the interval, Frankfurt try and get their goal. They haven't. And now Napoli have punished them.
Yeah, there's so much space down the right-hand side for Politano. He's got so much time to wait for his cross, lofts it in. It's actually a really difficult header for Osimhen to make, in that it's looped so high. He has to do a lot to get power on it. In the end, he doesn't really opt for power and just gets his head underneath it and loops it over Kevin Trapp and into the back of the net. But it's exactly what we've been saying this whole game. Frankfurt, maybe you could argue, being the better team in this first half. I think Napoli obviously had an electric few moments in the start of the game, but Frankfurt have looked maybe the more likely over the recent 10, 15, 20 minutes. But that is just a wonderfully dispatched header by Victor Osimhen. He just jumps up so high, it's so comfortable, and you can see on our pictures the disappointment on the Frankfurt players' faces. I think they know that maybe this tie is out of their reach now.
Well, it was an absolutely remarkable header, wasn't it? Anthony Taylor's blowing for the half-time whistle. Absolutely fantastic goal, really, it was from Victor Osimhen. Looks even better from the replays as he's leaning back. He's got to do so much work to get the pace on the ball to send it into the far corner, which he did to full effect. Frankfurt have been punished right at the death. They tried to throw their weight about in getting back into the game, but Napoli get the goal just before the break and make it 3-0 on aggregate on the night. Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0.
Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt nil. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high and loops it over Kevin Trapp. Brilliant goal. Half-time, 1-0. Well, half-time, and it's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. That's 3-0 to the Italians on aggregate. It was a pretty interesting half, to be honest. Frankfurt really had a few opportunities. They put a lot of pressure on King Min-jae at one point. He was almost dispossessed inside the 6-yard box, which would have been a goal, but they just haven't had that final pass. As for Napoli, they've looked dangerous going forward, and right on the stroke of half-time, Victor Osimhen with a beautiful header, lofted in by Politano. He gets it really high. Well, we'll leave that just there and welcome you back as this game is just about to get back underway. And it is underway now as a kickoff from Frankfurt gets us going once again. Anthony Taylor blows his whistle and the game begins. I'm Josh Hall. This is independent off-tube studio-based commentary coverage of Napoli versus Frankfurt. I'm joined by Ben White. It's Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0 on the night. That's a 3-0 aggregate score at the moment. I wouldn't really say Napoli were by far the better team in that first half, but they've come out on top, and you'd imagine they're probably pretty smooth sailing to go through now.
Yeah, and you said it when the goal went in from Osimhen, that the pictures that we have, we saw the frustration and in part devastation of the Frankfurt players, because they had a great first half, didn't they? Once they didn't get their goal, they proved that there may be one round the corner just with how they were performing, and they were getting beyond the Napoli defence on a few occasions, but all it took was a little ball into the box. But more than the cross, it was the individual brilliance of Osimhen, wasn't it, to head it into that corner. They've got a set piece early on here as Mario whips it to the back stick looking for Osimhen. Kevin Trapp manages to claim relatively comfortably in the end. But yeah, just going back to the end of that first half, because it was only a matter of seconds, wasn't it, before Anthony Taylor blew his whistle. So Oliver Glasner must have just absolutely torn up his half-time notes to tell his team. There were probably notes of encouragement for his players and saying that you're still in this based on your first 45. I mean, maybe it's short-sighted to say they're out of it now, but maybe more often, they should be ready with a 3-goal deficit now against Napoli. But yeah, that 15 minutes would have been interesting for Glasner, because all of their hard work in the first half, and it was just cancelled out so easily by a bit of brilliance from Osimhen.
Yeah, it certainly was cancelled out completely by that late goal in the first half. So Victor Osimhen, the only scorer of the game. We still have Ndika and Lenz on yellow cards from a Frankfurt point of view. No yellow cards for Napoli so far in this game. Frankfurt trying to get themselves back in the way with a free kick just inside the Napoli half. It goes back to Ndika, and they'll start from the back. There's an opportunity for them to really throw everything at this game now. It's a decision that Glasner will have to make as to whether he wants to maybe play damage limitation, keep momentum going forward and think we put in a good performance, or whether he wants to say, look, we're out of this competition. If it stays this way, throw everything at it and see if anything sticks. Be intriguing to see which of those two he goes for, as Osimhen just plays the ball down the right-hand side. It's picked up really well by Politano. He loops one into the middle where Kvaratskhelia was waiting, but it's just about got away, and there's a bit of a late tackle there in the end from Rui. And that was a nasty one on Knof, and I think it is a free kick, but not a yellow card this time.
No, still no yellow card for Napoli. Now, there's an argument for it, isn't there? Because he'd beaten Rui to the ball and could have gone round it to start a Frankfurt counter, but just the only punishment being a free kick against the Neapolitans. Yeah, going back to Glasner, you said it yourself, he's not going to be naive, is he? He probably thought after the first leg that the damage had been done. And maybe even now going a goal down here, so 3 on aggregate, it could give him just license to just have a free pass at this half now. Maybe just play with no fear, because maybe the odds are totally against them now. As Goethe tries and whips it, looking for Daichi Kamada, is cleared by Rahmani, not all too convincingly, so it'll come out to Christopher Lenz. So yeah, they haven't got that risk anymore, have they? There's not really a threat, so why not just try and play with as much confidence as you have and go for it without fear?
Yeah, you certainly feel as though if they could get an early goal in this second half, they'd start to put a small bit of doubt in Napoli minds. If they manage to get a second one, then it would completely change the outlook on this game. Herman Lozano looks like he's warming up on the sidelines. Just saw pictures of him, independent of Tube Studio commentary. Interesting to see what difference he would make if he came on. Daichi Kamada's coming forward now, though, for Frankfurt. Plays it out to the left-hand side, where Lunds was waiting, but he didn't manage to get a cross away in the end, as it was Politano that came back to clear away, helping out with his defensive duties. Still a Frankfurt ball, though. The throw-in was taken short, and they will just try and start again from the back. Just keep you updated with the rest of the scores as it's ticking towards the last 10 minutes in those Premier League fixtures. It's still Brighton 1, Crystal Palace 0, and Southampton 0, Brentford 1. As for the other Champions League game this evening, it still remains goalless between Real Madrid and Liverpool. That leaves it at a 5-2 aggregate score for the Madrid side. Napoli versus Frankfurt here, and it's still Napoli 1, Frankfurt 0. Throw in to Napoli. It's going to be taken on the far right-hand side, played into Zielinski. He plays one down to the right-hand side, and there was an opportunity to try and find Osimhen, but the header away in the end by Tuta, and it will go all the way back now to Mere. And they'll just start. It just feels as though maybe the game's lost a bit of intensity. Frankfurt had to come out and start early, had to come out and push. They really had maybe 30 seconds of that about a minute ago, but Napoli, I think they're just happy to just take the sting out of this game now.
Yeah, and games are defined by fine margins, aren't they? So we gave credit to Frankfurt for that first half performance, and then in those few seconds, Napoli just really, in theory, have killed the game, haven't they? We saw some players warming up for Spalletti's men, and maybe with, in the opinion of Spalletti, if the game was wrapped up, he could bring some on. As you say, Lozano was warming up. They've got so many options from the bench, which they might use and look towards the domestic duties. But of course, these are the last few games in the round of 16 as well, aren't they? After tonight, we'll know all of the quarter-finalists, and it'll be looking ahead to the draw.
Certainly will be looking ahead to the draw. There's going to be some pretty tasty ones coming up, and Champions League really starts to hot up at this stage. We see the biggest ties between the biggest clubs as Napoli are trying to burst through midfield and have a shot away at the moment if they can. It comes on the left-hand side. Really good defending in the end by Tuta, and I tell you what, it was a very surprising name on the end of it, because it was Kim Min-jae who had just burst through from the back, found himself on the left-hand side of the area. Good defending in the end, but he managed to get a shot away.
He did, and that attack all started from him. He intercepted it just inside Frankfurt's own half. He played it with Zielinski, got it back off of the Polish international, and then just ran. He's got buckets of pace, hasn't he? But he's got that strength and height as well. So it's a nightmare for anyone, not least defenders as well, to see a fast brick wall running at you. And maybe just the finish was lacking. Of course, it's not expected from a defender, is it? But he's just clearly shown that intent. Again, there, good interception. So, well, Napoli, at least, and especially through Kim Min-jae, they'll be happy with 3-0, but they'll want a bit more.
Perhaps he will. They'll keep that momentum going. Spoke already about how high flying they are in the league. They look so comfortably as if they have almost got two hands on that trophy come May, but 18 points clear. It feels very difficult to imagine that anyone is going to be able to knock them off their perch at the top as the ball comes into Zelensky. Pockets of space to run into. Lovely bit of skill to just flew away from Sao. Onto the right-hand side, it's picked up by Politano. Overlapping run. Oh, but it's just tackled away in the end by Kamada, who's back doing some defensive duties. Poor clearance, though. So it's on the left-hand side with Kvaratskhelia. He cuts into his right, tries to loft one over to that right-hand side, back over to Politano. Then it comes in, there's an opportunity for a cross in the middle, and Osimhen's put it in the back of the net. It's 2-0, it's 2 for Osimhen. He's down on the floor, writhing in pain. I think maybe someone may have stood on his arm as he's put it in the back of the net. He was calm and collected after he scored his first one. You wouldn't have known that he was onside, and put it in the back of the net. This one he's not had a chance to celebrate because he's injured. They're all surrounding him, the Napoli players. They're waving on the medical team. It's a bittersweet moment for the Naples side as they've managed to go 2 up in this game, but Osimhen is down on the floor, injured. It looks nasty, and that is what's happened. Just looking at a replay, he puts the ball in the back of the net, and then he is stood on by Tuta. I think Tuta may just land on his arm. Oh, actually, maybe it's just the way he goes down, Osimhen, as we have a little look. I think, yeah, he's just landed on his arm funny, I think, hasn't he? It's a nasty one.
It is, and it's just because of his instinctive finish, isn't it? He's going to throw his body at the ball to tap it in. I mean, it's a simple goal, isn't it? He's a yard from the goal line. But the ball's coming in at pace, so he's just got to throw his body in it, and maybe, yeah, he just hasn't got enough time to cushion his fall, so it lands awkwardly on his wrist. As you said, he was writhing in pain, wasn't he? Rolling around. The physios are on, tending to him. So whilst the joy will be there that he's got his second of the game, and Napoli's second of the game, that's his 5th in the Champions League already this campaign. Of course, Haaland got 5 just in one evening, didn't he? But this is another fantastic striker, isn't it, in Victor Osimhen. He's got a huge future ahead of him. He's already showing his current ability in Serie A, and now, of course, the Champions League. He's immediately got some white strapping on his wrist, so you'd imagine he is going to carry on. He's going to be looking for a hat-trick, but Spalletti might want to play it safe and rest his star striker now.
Yeah, you'd imagine Spalletti, now that they're 4-0 up on aggregate, now they look pretty comfortable, might be having a look at making a few substitutions as this game ticks on. They've got big games coming up, and also they'll want them for the next round of the Champions League. Ball at the back now with Meret. Plays it long, searching for Kvaratskhelia, but he's not managed to find him. It's on the left-hand side as they just try and play out still. Napoli done well to keep hold of the ball. It's in the middle of the park with Zelensky. He's dispossessed, but it only goes far out for a throw-in. Osimhen now back on the pitch. We didn't really have much of a chance to talk about the goal. It was really well worked. It started on the left-hand side with the Georgian youngster, crosses it over to the right-hand side, and then it's a lovely pass inside, and as you say, really easy finish for Osimhen.
It was, but it's only easy because of all the hard work done before that, isn't it? With the link-up play in midfield. It's always been a team full of confidence, hasn't it, Napoli, all season long, and they're not stopping it too, are they? All 4 in aggregate, because Kvaratskhelia is running it in Dika, but good defending in the end. Yeah,
Kvaratskhelia has just managed to carry the ball for a good 2 or 3 seconds down the left-hand side, but Ndika, as you say, does really well, gets his body in the way. It's still a Napoli ball, though, on the left-hand side. Made by Politano. Kvaratskhelia tries to chip one over the top towards Osimhen, but it's headed away. He's definitely hungry for that hat-trick. Left-hand side now is Frankfurt trying to come forward. Ball played over the top by Lenz, trying to find Bore, but he's not managed to. It's bouncing around a little bit in midfield as it's almost last chance saloon for Frankfurt. They're going to need any sort of goal in the next minute or two to be able to have any, or even dream really, of being able to get back into this game. As you say, it may just be trying to look for damage limitation now. Lovely passing work in the middle of the pitch for them though, but Bore's just almost lost the ball, turns away, manages to find a teammate in So. Now So's just got options on his right-hand side if he wants to try and find them. One of those is Buta, but it's gone back infield towards Roda. Now on the left-hand side, they'll come forward once more. Once more, it's a chance for Lance. Plays one into the middle where Daichi Kamada was waiting, but also so was Ramani, who manages to clear the ball long. And now Osimhen's managed to chase it down. He does really well, almost seal dribbling it on his head, but brilliant defending once more by Frankfurt. At times they've been really good. It's Tuta there that gets his body in the way, and Dike and Tuta at times have looked really good.
Yeah, and as we said, it's been a good performance for Frankfurt. You just think if the scoreline hadn't been so punishing in the first leg, then this performance could have been a bit more deserved to get something out of the game. Here's Rafael Borre, though. He's going to swing it into Daichi Kamada. If he was onside there, that is a glorious opportunity for the Japanese attacker. He's stuck a leg out for about 4 yards from goal. It's gone straight into the path of Alex Meri. I think Rafael Borre was offside in the end, just seeing our replays of our independent offshoot pictures, as he did try and drill a ball into Kamada. But, well, just before that, I was about to say, still full credit to Frankfurt, because they may not be in the Champions League next season because they're struggling in Bundesliga, and they may not finish in top 4, which would grant them that ticket for next campaign. So they may as well just give it as much as possible for the last half hour here, which they are. And it was a great chance for Kamada. I think it probably was offside in the end, but why not go for it?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why they've not managed to go for it. Kvaratskhelia is trying to come up the other end and make insult add to injury here, but good goalkeeping in the end by Kevin Trapp. The pass was just a little bit too long from the Georgian as he searched for Politano on the right-hand side, and Kevin Trapp's an experienced goalkeeper, did really well to just stay alert to that, came out and picked that ball up. We are now 58 minutes played in this game. Napoli 2, Frankfurt 0. And that leaves it at 4-0 in regards to the aggregate score. Elsewhere in the Champions League, it's still 0-0 between Real Madrid and Liverpool. The Premier League fixtures are coming towards full time. I'll let you know those scores when the final whistles have gone. Daichi Kamada's bursting forward here. Lovely little fake shot almost. Managed to find his way in the box of the ball. It's a bicycle kick. It's a real little bit of, well, he sort of made it up on the spot in the end, hasn't he, Borre in the box. Kamada just lost control of it. In fact, it may have been Goetze. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to have a second look. But it's just improvisation in the box. Flipped over, but it's just gone wide. It was Borre in the end. Really not the best of efforts, but they are pushing and they're trying.
Yeah, and it's instinctive from Borre, isn't it? It comes at him quickly. So he just tries the spectacular in the end to try and catch Meri out at his near post. Yeah, since going 2-0 down on the evening, they've had two decent opportunities. Kamada sort of at the heart of both of them. I said that earlier in the game that Knauf really hasn't managed to have his stamp on this evening. It's been the other front three, Goetze, Borre and Kamada, that have been a bit more threatening in the attack. And as we said there, Kamada and Borre linking up brilliantly to just get off of Frankfurt a consolation goal. But even still, the scoreline is harsh on Frankfurt in the sense they've performed so well on the evening. But Napoli, they don't need to get out of second gear, and they're still so imperious.
Yeah, they still look in control of the game, despite maybe not having full control of the fact that there's been a few attacks already in this second half from Frankfurt, but they're about as far into the driver's seat as you possibly can be with a 4-0 aggregate lead just as the hour mark is about to be reached. 59% possession they've had so far, and they are at home as form sides in Europe. They definitely look like it as well at times when they play, as a bit of a loose clearance in the way with it. There was pressure coming from Frankfurt, and now there's pockets of space because that pressure came, and here they come forward on that right hand side. It is Politano. He's got Osman making a run off him. There's options in the middle of Osman, wants to try and find, and in the end it's pretty comfortable defending from a Frankfurt point of view, but he goes back out to left hand side where Kvaratskhelia cuts back in on his right foot. Let's fly! Brilliant from Kvaratskhelia.
Yeah, maybe the first of the game that we've seen from him. I mean, you just saw his frustration as it was saved. He just punched the air in anger because he nearly bent it right into the corner. I still think it's critical just because of the performances he's had this season. He's been absolutely remarkable. You just got to find just brilliant play from him. He's seen that Osman has got to
nearly did. We're going to see our first change of the evening, and it comes from Frankfurt and Oliver Glasner. It's going to be Faride Aladou who comes on for Knauf. As you said yourself in the first half, and we've said it in the second half, we've not really seen much of him, and that probably makes sense as to why he's gone off. Napoli coming forward, Kvaratskhelia again, looping one over the top. It's a brilliant ball over to Di Lorenzo. He's managed to find his way into the area. Oh, there could be a penalty here. He's gone down inside the area. It is a penalty. Zelensky taken down in the area. Anthony Taylor points to the spot. He's having absolutely none of the arguments that are coming from the Frankfurt defenders. I'll have to have a look at it now. Zelensky gets the ball in the area. He gets his ball to it first. Yeah, it's a penalty. Dribble So just leaves a leg in, and as Zelensky almost turns, a bit of a Cruyff turn in the area, he's just taken over, caught on his trailing leg. It's definitely going to be a penalty.
It is, yeah. I think the South slightly slipped before the challenge. I mean, regardless, there's still a contact there, isn't it? It's a clear penalty. I thought the chance had gone when, as you say, Di Lorenzo gave it to Zielinski. If he'd found the pass again, it almost would have been the perfect goal where they worked in those tight spaces and found the captain again who could have slotted it home. It didn't, but Zielinski still kept it at his feet. And he's won the penalty. And interestingly enough, he's the one to take the ball. There's, of course, the chance for Victor Osimhen to get his hat-trick, isn't there? Which it doesn't look like is going to happen. Obviously, Zielinski is a bit more of the recognised penalty taker for the Neapolitans, so that they're not going to change that one bit, even to maybe grant Osimhen the chance of his third goal. They're going to stick with what they know. And, well, more likely than not, try and get a fifth in the tie. Zielinski looking at Trapp. And yeah, what a chance for him to get on the score sheet.
Yeah, absolutely. This would put the tie to bed. Anthony Taylor just organising the players, making sure no one encroaches. It's Kevin Trapp versus Zielinski. Napoli versus Frankfurt. A chance to put it to bed. Zielinski steps up, dispatches it straight down the middle. Trapp dives to the corner. Napoli 3, Frankfurt 0. It's job done.
It is, yeah, it's job done. I mean, there were still arguments whether the job was done after the first leg. And then in the first half, Frankfurt gave it as much as they gave as well. And then Osimhen got the goal to sort of kill it off, and since then there's been a few bursts of Frankfurt coming forward, but Napoli have found 2 goals in this second half, in the early stages of this second half as well, and that penalty, as you said, would just add insult to injury. It's just further frustration for Frankfurt, who have certainly been in this game, haven't they? The scoreline isn't entirely reflective of the performances of the two teams. There is the argument that maybe Napoli haven't needed to get out of second gear, and if they haven't needed to get out of second gear and they're still 3-0 up on the night, then they really are going to be a threat in the future knockout rounds.
Yeah, they certainly are. There'll be teams all over Europe watching on this game and thinking quite what might be the prospect in the next round as they face the thought of facing this Napoli team. In all of the hoorah after that, I think maybe a few complaints came from Frankfurt. So Mario Götze has found himself in Anthony Taylor's book. So the third player for Frankfurt to pick up a yellow card this evening. So Mario Götze, Evan Ndika and Christopher Lenz all on yellow cards for Napoli as they managed to win the ball high up the pitch again, but they can't quite keep it in play. It was Tuta that lost it in a pretty dangerous position. I do think it's interesting, as you say, for Zielinski to take that penalty when Osimhen was waiting there on his hat-trick. I thought maybe it might be one of those ones that we see more often now where someone holds the ball so that they get the abuse from the other players and then they hand it off at the last moment to the man who's actually going to take it. But he did it really well, Zielinski, confident down the middle.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes, let's say the ball was given to Osimhen. You could argue that that's the team spirit right there. They really want the striker to have a hat-trick. But on the flip side, you could say it's a team spirit of just being how regimented they are, and they're saying that, right, we're an entire team here. We're not going to change anything and stick to what we know best. Not grant the chance of a hat-trick instead of working for the team and just making sure that the job is done as a unit, which they have done there. So in that regard, I'm quite impressed really that they haven't given the ball to Osimhen for him to dispatch the penalty, because there could down the line come in the future knockarounds as a penalty to come, and it's always going to be Zielinski to step up, and he duly delivers as shown there. And with the tie practically over now as it is 5-0 on aggregate, Spalletti's going to make a few changes himself. Juan Jesus on for Kim Min-jae, and Herving Lozano, who was warming up on the touchline earlier, is also going to come on, but we haven't got confirmation just for who yet.
Yeah, Herving Lozano is obviously a really talented player. He's been at the top level really since for a while since he made that move from PSV Eindhoven. It's going to be Matteo Pochettino, who I think has had a pretty good night actually himself, who's making way. There is also going to be another change for Frankfurt. It looks like it's Philip Max that is ready on the sidelines, but again, we're not quite sure who he is coming on for just yet. So Lozano on alongside Juan Jesus as well. Job done for Napoli, and they'll make those changes to just try and make this look a bit more convincing at the back as well. Philip Max is the man who's come on, as I mentioned, so Christopher Lenz off, so no chance for a red card for Christopher Lenz as Philip Max comes on.
Yeah, and as for Kim Min-jae going off, I mean, he's just such a brilliant defender. Spalletti's going to take no chances. He wants him to rest up for future games, and it gives a chance for Juan Jesus to go out. So he's appeared in quite a few games this season as well. And yeah, as for Lozano, I mean, he's one of the attackers that have come on from the bench, but there'll be plenty more. They'll be licking their lips at the chance of this. It's sort of a free go, isn't it, to sort of boast your attacking qualities. I mean, Giovanni Simeone is one of those, amongst others. Elif Elmas is another, and then you've got the midfield, the likes of Ndombele, Gaetano, etc. They'll be all raring to come on to the field. They'll all be desperate to get in Spalletti's ear and say, there's a goal in this from me, so give me a chance of a run out and I'll try and prove my worth. There's 25 minutes left in this one, and still changes to be made for Napoli. Maybe there'll be a chance for Osimhen to get his hat-trick, or maybe they'll try and rest him up.
Yeah, Deji Kamada just trying to chase a pass in behind by Sebastian Roda, but it's gone all the way through to Alex Meret. Certainly feel as though maybe Osimhen will probably want to stay on the pitch. I know we're talking about that team attitude where you're regimented, you know who the penalty takers are, you play to the game plan every day, and that's what wins you games, but you certainly feel as though he'll want to stay on the pitch and try and get the hat-trick. It's pretty uncommon that players get Champions League hat-tricks, and he'll feel as though this is a serious opportunity for him to get one. Frankfurt just trying to turn up the pressure themselves. Mario Götze has it just on the edge of the area, tries to find one in field to Boré, but it's a poor pass. It's behind the striker. And once again, Alex Meret is able to just come out comfortably and pick that up. It is full time in the Brighton Crystal Palace game now. It's 1-0. That game ended to Brighton. So Brighton getting back to winning ways. De Zerbi was saying that his side had been unfortunate and not got the results they deserved after their 2-2 draw to Leeds United. As for Brentford versus Southampton, it's in the 99th minute there, quite a lot of added time, but in that time, in the 97th, Johan Visser has added a second goal for Brighton, so they are 2-0 up to Southampton. Bad news for the Saints in terms of their bid to stay in the Premier League. It's also Real Madrid 0, Liverpool 0 so far in that game, so still 5-2 on aggregate in terms of the Champions League. It has now finished that Southampton-Brentford game. So full time in the Premier League games, 0-0 in the Real Madrid-Liverpool game, and it's here, Napoli 3, Frankfurt 0, 5-0 on aggregate. And I'll pass over now to Ben to take you through to full time.
Very nice roundup, Josh. As we as you say, yeah, the tie is probably up, isn't it? Who would want to face Napoli now in the quarter-finals? I really do think they have a good shot at going for this trophy. They've been brilliant on this evening throughout the Champions League campaign, throughout the Serie A campaign as well, of course, domestically. 18 points ahead of any competitor in the division. As for the Champions League, it's just yet another win and perhaps yet another clean sheet as well for them. Here's Rafael Boré, goes down under the pressure of Rahmani. No free kick given by Anthony Taylor. The frustrations just seeping in deeper and deeper for the visitors, who in part have been in this game, as Sebastian Roda flies all the way through Frank Zambo and Gisa. Referee maybe understandingly not giving a yellow card in the end to Sebastian Roda there. It's an interesting one because he sort of has that scissor action, and it never looks nice when there's a planted foot. Zambo and Gisa had his left foot planted. Roda was quick to apologise to Zambo and Gisa and getting back onto his feet, as we just see a replay of that penalty from Zielinski to make it 3-0 and 5-0 on aggregate. That's the 25th goal scored by Napoli in the Champions League this campaign. Quite a remarkable number, isn't it? And you'd imagine there'll be many more to come, if not in this game, then in the quarter-final. As for Frankfurt, only 7 goals scored in this European campaign. They have struggled trying to find the back of the net, and they've had their opportunities in this game, especially when the deadlock still was yet to be broken at the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona. But that goal just before half-time really did take the sting out of it and essentially kill off the tie and all hopes of Oliver Glasner's men pulling off a remarkable Champions League comeback was no more. So for them, their sights will immediately turn again to domestic action. A tough one as well, away to Union Berlin in the Bundesliga. Union Berlin, incidentally, one of the 5 teams ahead of them in the league table. As for Napoli, They'll be travelling away to Torino to try and just get another 3 points. So many already achieved in Serie A, and get them one stage closer to lifting the Scudetto for the first time since 1990. There are even arguments from critics that the chance of a treble might have been on at one occasion for Napoli, but surprisingly enough, and maybe ironically, they were eliminated from the Coppa Italia against last placed Cremonese in Serie A, so that one was up, but there's still 2 titles for them to battle, Serie A and the Champions League. Here's Frankfurt trying to get a consolation goal as Mario Goetze tries to loft it forward to Daichi Kamada, goes straight into the hands of Alex Mere. And if it wasn't already the motivation gone after the first goal or after the second, the third has really sort of put the final nail in Frankfurt's coffin. They've brought on attacking changes as well, haven't they, to just try and bring a spark into the game. But all the players know out there now, they just want the final whistle to come, and yet it's still so far away.
Yeah, they've got to see out this game now and try and sort of play for their fans, play for their pride, and see this game out. They can't give up to it, but yeah, the game's been gone for a long time now for Frankfurt. I just interestingly heard you speaking just a moment ago about how they have had opportunities, but they've just not managed to take advantage, and they've only had one shot on target in the entire game, Frankfurt. You wouldn't argue that they've played like a team who have only been able to have one shot on target. They've been in dangerous positions, but every pass has been ever so slightly behind the man when it's the last pass, or just slightly too high on a cross, and they've just been a matter of inches. It's a game of inches at times, isn't it, football, away from being able to score those goals and give themselves an opportunity in this game. But they can leave this game with their heads held high, despite the fact that it's 5-0, as it looks like now Luciano Spalletti will decide to finally rest Kvaratskhelia, who has, for me, had a brilliant game at times, but not quite been what I was expecting.
No, and he'll be frustrated, won't he? Just given his form this season, he might have wanted to get himself on the score sheet, but if you have your off days when you're already through to the next round, then I don't think you'll mind that one bit, will you? Tongi and Ndombele also coming on, so it's Elif Elmas on for Kvaratskhelia, Zielinski off for the former Spurs midfielder, former Lyon as well, of course, when he made that move to the Premier League. It didn't work out for him there, but he is performing well for Spalletti. Frankfurt are going to make a change themselves as well. Sebastian Roeder, the captain, has given his armband to another of his teammates, and on in his place is Christian Jakic, number 6 for the German outfit. Again, just maybe given a chance for some players to have a run out in their Champions League campaign, which is only about 20 minutes or so away from coming to an end, but maybe the Europa League reigning champions can still keep their heads held high. They've done well to reach the knockout rounds, getting out of their group. Here is the recent substitute. Jakic goes all the way back to Kevin Ndika. Now Kevin Trapp. Now to Tuta, back into Trapp. Osimhen is still on the pitch, incidentally. You'd imagine he's raring to try and get a hat-trick. Still no sign of Giovanni Simeone, who of course has appeared on a few occasions in the Champions League. He's backed himself a couple of goals as well. But for the time being, it's the Nigerian who stays out there leading the line for the Neapolitans. Here's Lobotka. He's got Zambo Anguissa for support. Instead goes back to Juan Jesus. A rare touch for him since coming on. Since he's entered the field for Kim Min-jae, the vast majority of possession has been inside Frankfurt's own half, as Osimhen holds it up under pressure from Sao and Ndika. What play that is in the end from Napoli's number 9. Sensational, really. He's got it all in his locker, hasn't he? The pace, the strength, the finishing ability, and the hold-up play.
Yeah, he had about 3 Frankfurt players trying to get the ball off him. He just puts his back towards 2 of them, his arm out to block the other one off, and just does so well to keep that ball planted, almost glued to the bottom of his feet until he finds a pocket of space. And what it's done is it's meant Napoli have had the ball the whole time. Funnily enough, they've now lost it because Osimhen was offside in the build-up to a second attack from it. But no, he's been absolutely brilliant. I've been really impressed by him, and I made a mistake about it. I was really impressed as well by Kvaratskhelia. I just think by his standards, he's not quite had the game you expect him to, but Osimhen has really showed why he's become one of the hottest properties in Europe, and Napoli have got some serious talent on their hands.
Well, he's nearly averaging a goal a game, isn't he? It's 5-5 for the Champions League. He scored 19 in 22 Serie A matches. It really is a remarkable record that he is having, as is really the entirety of the Napoli side. Kvaratskhelia included. You said Politano's had a good game as well. Anthony Taylor's got his yellow card out, not for Frankfurt on this occasion. It'll be for the hosts, Napoli. There was both Jean Jesus and Mario Rui called the attention of Anthony Taylor. I think in the end it was given to the Portuguese fullback. João Jesus went over as well to have a word. I think in the end it was in fact for the recent centre-back, recent substitution, João Jesus, rather than Mario Rui going into Anthony Taylor's box. So it's a free kick for Eintracht Frankfurt, about 40 to 45 yards from goal. A chance for them though to whip it in and try and get their name on the scoreline as it is whipped, looking for that central area. Victor Osimhen, well, if he hasn't got all of it in his locker in an attacking sense, he's got it in a defensive one as well. He rose well to clear it out for a Frankfurt corner. It wasn't a bad delivery in the end. There was only 5 Frankfurt men up for that one though, 8 defenders for Napoli. But you can imagine they might bring a few more forward on this occasion, the visitors, for this corner kick, which Philip Max has gone over to take for the in-swinger. Mario Goethe is the short option. 6 in the area for Frankfurt, about 9 in the end for Napoli, as Max whips it towards the gloves of Mere. Does well to punch it, and Ndombele can have his first influence on the game. He's dispossessed. Goethe will try and find a teammate ahead of him in Farid Alidou. He won't get it, and the ball still does come in the box though from Frankfurt. Out wide now to Tuta. He's dispossessed though from Di Lorenzo, and he's miles out of position now. If Napoli can try and bring a counter forward, Tuta does brilliantly in the end to recover and bring Frankfurt forward yet again. Certainly not going down without a fight. Oliver Glasner's men coming forward even with this huge deficit against them, but the ball will fall kindly in the end to the gloves of Mere.
Yeah, it's one of those where I think Frankfurt, I know they're trying there, but it seems half-hearted at times. They're happy to win the ball back and try and not let Napoli come forward and get another goal against them. But even when they come forward, you said it yourselves, at that corner there was 9 Napoli men in the box to only 6 from Frankfurt. They're not pushing as many men forward as they would need to if they want to get back in this game. But they know it's how they reach. They're 5-0 down. There's 12 minutes to play. And it could get worse as Irving Lozano has managed to find himself in a bit of space down the right-hand side.
He got ahead of Philip Max, and he's gone further central now for Alif Elmas now to Ndombele. Well, the deadlock has finally been broken at the Bernabeu. It's gone in favour of Carlo Ancelotti's men. 1-0 to them, 6-2 on aggregate. Of course, the damage really was already done at Anfield, but Karim Benzema has shoved the knife further in to Liverpool, getting a goal with about 10 minutes to go of normal time there. No free kick given in favour of Frankfurt, so Napoli can come forward with a slight numerical advantage if they get it right. It's out to Mario Rui. Now Elif Elmas still inside Frankfurt's final third, going centrally and further back in the end to João Jesus. Now they'll play the ball out of play in the end. I think intentionally Luciano Spalletti almost looks apologetically on, but I think it's Philip Max over on the far side who just caught a stud from the Mexican Irving Lozano. So Max going down, requiring the treatment from the physios, and well, with Real Madrid scoring, if it wasn't in any doubt already that they would go through after that first leg scoreline. I'll ask for your thoughts in a second, because Giovanni Simeone is going to come on, you'd imagine now, for Victor Osimhen. But with these final 2 matches of the round of 16 essentially being wrapped up, we've more or less got a quarter-finalist, haven't we, with Benfica, Chelsea, Bayern Munich, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Man City, Napoli and Real Madrid. Some huge teams in there. Be interesting to see who is drawn who in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, some really, really tasty ties, I think, to come up, aren't there? You look at, for me, I'm excited by the Benficas and the Napolis, the team that maybe you weren't expecting to get that far. Maybe your Inters as well, that they might cause a few shocks, but also you've got those traditional teams in there as well, your Man Cities and your Real Madrids, who are obviously barring some sort of absolute miracle in the last 8 minutes or so in Madrid at the moment, are going to be going through. Chelsea as well, a team who just haven't played well this season. They've managed to push their way through there. AC Milan. So yeah, it's going to be really, really intriguing what happens in that next round, and we're set up for some brilliant Champions League ties, I think. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, the very definition of a standing ovation is going on right now for Victor Osimhen as he comes off for Giovanni Simeone. He's, if nothing else as well, a bit of a cult hero around Napoli, isn't he? Wears that mask along his face. We've seen a few fans in the crowd as well that have their own in support of their Nigerian superstar. On his place is the son of Atletico Madrid's manager, Diego Simeone, in Giovanni Simeone. A chance for him to try and get his name on the score sheet with about 10 or so minutes ago. You said it yourself, Benfica have done brilliantly as well to get their place in the quarter-finals. It's been a good showing from Italian sides with AC Milan and Inter Milan going through. Each of those, incidentally, haven't reached the quarterfinals for the best part of a decade. And Napoli have never reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League, so it'll be a first outing for them in the final 8. Good showing from Italian teams. As we said, I suppose really to get to the quarterfinals, it's completely on merit, and to be the best, you have to beat the best. And I really do think that Napoli have a solid chance to go all the way.
Well, look, I think when you get to the last day of any competition, I think pretty much all teams have got a solid chance of getting there. I think Napoli will be among the favourites, won't they, now, with only 8 teams left in that pool. But anyone's got an opportunity, haven't they? I think as long as you show up on the day, that's all that matters in the Champions League. Chelsea haven't been able to show up in the Premier League at all this season, really. But they've managed to go away and beat Dortmund, haven't they? So if they show up on the day, they certainly can do it. But Napoli look like they're showing up week in, week out in the league, in the Champions League. They certainly look like they've got an opportunity to do something this year.
Well, it's the beauty of knockout football, isn't it? You said it yourself, that all you have to do is turn up on the day. You could be performing terribly in league football format, and then just 190 minutes or 2 across a 2-legged format, and all of a sudden you can put a good run together. As for Frankfurt, they will be bowing out at the round of 16, but they're still given a decent fight, and they're coming forward here on the left-hand side. Goetze into Max. He tries to cut it back, looking for Sauhalf. Appeals for a handball, nothing given by Anthony Taylor. Mario Goetze will try and keep it alive. Di Lorenzo marks him. It goes back to Sau, and now into Daichi Kamada into the area. If he can try and get a yard of space away from Ndombele and Di Lorenzo, in the end he's hounded out by the Napoli defence. Di Lorenzo bringing it forward. Now Simeone tries to lay it off back into the feet of Di Lorenzo, straight into the possession of Frankfurt again, though, with Buta on the right wing. Finds one of the substitutes in Alidou. Now into Sau. Lay off from Borre into Kamada. It's good play from Frankfurt again here, and on the right Buta's found some space. First time cross blocked by Elif Elmas, out for a Frankfurt corner. And even though this tie is up, I mean, I've already said it, haven't they? They're still giving it a good go, aren't they? They're desperate for a consolation goal at the very least. And they're making a decent account for themselves, aren't they?
Yeah, they can go out of this game with their heads held high. I think I mentioned it earlier. You know, they've not come and just rolled over and said, look, we can't get through. What's the point in trying? They're pushing, and they want to be. They want to show their fans, you know, why they've got to this position in the Champions League, and they've deserved to be here, Frankfurt. And maybe they've not been able to fight off a giant like Napoli that have been on such fantastic form, but they've played good football, and on a different night they get 1 or 2 goals because some of the passes were just so close as they just take this corner short to Mario Goetze.
Short to Goetze. Max will get it back off of the World Cup winner as he's whipped into the area. The deflection falls kindly in the end into the hands of Alex Mere. And yeah, you said it yourself, they've made a good account for themselves. I'm sure the Frankfurt fans will be relatively happy with the performance. Just in little pockets of the game, Napoli have managed to punish them with a couple of goals. Frankfurt fans, of course, that had a bit of difficulty arriving in Naples, didn't they? Trying to get into the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, sort of a flip opposite of what we saw in the knockout rounds of the Europa League last season, in the match at the Camp Nou against Barcelona, when famously some home fans were selling their tickets, and in the end there's about 35,000 Frankfurt fans in the end, almost a numerical advantage in favour of the German team against Barcelona. Of course, they beat the Catalans on their way to lifting the Europa League trophy via a penalty shootout in Seville against Rangers, which earned them a place in the Champions League. Of course, they didn't finish in the top 4 of the Bundesliga last campaign, so they made their way into this competition through winning the Europa League. They finished 11th last year, meandering in mid-table. It's a bit better off in this campaign, finding themselves in 6th. As we said, without a win in the last 4 games in all competitions, Oliver Glasner will want his team to pick up some form as we do edge through the final third of the season, edging nearer to those last few hurdles when every point becomes even more crucial, doesn't it? As for Napoli, they have a far more of a buffer, an 18-point buffer against teams ahead of them in Serie A. Irving Lozano goes down looking for a penalty, and then all of a sudden Frankfurt make a bit of a meal of it at the back. The combination in the end of Tuta and Kevin Trapp, neither of them wanted the ball really, so Trapp took no chances to clear it out for a throw-in for Napoli deep inside their own half. Lozano there's an argument for a foul in the end, but having said that, it was out of the area anyway.
Yeah, it was out the area. I think he's actually made the right decision there, Anthony Taylor. It's just a collision of two players for me. It's two players that have sort of just run into each other. No one's really fouled the other. They're both going for the ball and they both clatter into each other. No one really comes out better or worse off. I think Lozano just decides to almost throw himself to the floor in an attempt to get something. So, yeah, look, I maybe said he was naive in the first half, the referee, that he was maybe giving yellow cards for things that shouldn't have been, but I think overall he's let this game flow pretty well. That said, it's not particularly been a feisty game by any stretch of the imagination. Neither side have really been trying to impose themselves in a physical manner on the others. I think maybe Frankfurt had that press on in the first half, didn't they, where they were trying to get the first every ball and they left a few little tackles in here and there. But he's refereed it quite well, and it's been an entertaining game. But yeah, Napoli have just come out on top, and I've been really impressed with them. We spoke before the game about, you know, how Napoli look like this team, and you bet them that maybe that they could win this tournament. I think after watching today, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that would think that they're not a contender in that.
Yeah, they'll certainly want to try and get their way into Istanbul for the final in May. Of course, there's 2 rounds before that. We'll have the draw of the quarterfinals in only 2 days' time, so it's not long before the fans of Napoli and the other 7 quarterfinalists will know who they're up against. Here's Daichi Kamada running forward at the Napoli defence. He's got Max on the overlap. He finds him, and it's a good ball in the end into the area, nearly testing out Alex Mere. In the end, and it was the central midfielder, the number 6, in the end, in Christian Jakic, who nearly got onto the end of it. It's a good run from Kamada, good overlap from Max in the end, and well, that's the very definition of them trying to get a goal, when you have the holding midfielder making a run into the 6-yard box.
Yeah, they're trying to push for it, aren't they? I think Kamada's been the one that sort of dragged them through this second half at times. He's been picking at the ball in pockets of space that he wasn't picking it up in the first half. When he gets it, he wants to push forward, and it's allowing the defensive midfielders, it's allowing the fullbacks to come forward and just make runs to try and grab something from Frankfurt. I'll make the point again, because I think it's an important one to make, that Frankfurt haven't looked like a team that deserved to lose 3-0 tonight. Funnily enough, Napoli look like a team that have deserved to win 3-0, but Frankfurt maybe not a team who deserve to lose 3-0, because I think Napoli have been brilliant, they've been professional, and they've had that extra level of quality over Frankfurt. But Frankfurt have been organised, they've looked good, they've just had a couple misplaced passes in the final third that have prevented them getting goals, and they've just fallen short in terms of the level of quality that Napoli have had.
Yeah, and that's a totally fair reflection, that Napoli fully deserve to go through, but Frankfurt, you'd imagine they feel a bit unfortunate to be down by such a deficit, although you can argue that the damage was already done in the first leg in Frankfurt. Giovanni Simeone trying to roll behind Tuta in the end, but the miscontrol from the Argentine goes gratefully into the hands of Kevin Trapp as we enter the 90th minute, only a few seconds before fourth official puts his board up. You wouldn't imagine there'll be too many minutes added on. Might just put Oliver Glasner's men out of their misery, as Glasner does have the ball at his feet, giving it to Mario Rui for Napoli to take the throw in. Anguissa goes all the way back to João Jesus. He'll get it back off of the Brazilian defender, as there's very little pressure now from Frankfurt. Having said that, Kamada does chase down João Jesus. They've been full of pressing in this game, and they're not giving it up, in fairness to them. Here's Rafael Borre now with Alidou. Looks for Mario Goetze. He'll get it, albeit via the deflection off of Lobotka. Can't control it, and now Napoli will come forward. Only 2 minutes of added time in this one. I did say there wouldn't be too many added on with the aggregate scoreline so far in favour of Napoli. Long ball into the box, looking for Giovanni Simeone. Straight into the hands again of Kevin Trapp, and he'll roll it out quickly into the feet of Kamada. As you said, probably the best performer in a Frankfurt shirt this evening. He'll try and get it back off of Jaksic here. Rafael Borre instead will take it. He's got Max on the left wing. He's got Goetze ahead of him. He finds him into Napoli's penalty area. Rahmani tries to charge him down. Borre gets the shot away, unfortunately blocked by his own teammate in Kamada. Borre tries to get again behind Stanislav Lobotka, runs into a Slovakian brick wall, and the ball will go into the hands of Alex Mere. I suppose they've been unfortunate all game, Frankfurt, haven't they? And when your luck is out, you have your own shot blocked by a teammate.
That's exactly it. I was about to say the same thing. That sums up their night. They are looking, even just for that consolation goal, shooting from distance, and it clatters into the back of one of their own players inside the area. It probably would have at least tested Alex Meret had it gone past the attacker. But yeah, they've just not quite had the look go their way. But Napoli have been so professional. I've been really impressed with them. And even now, passing it around the back, they look comfortable on the ball. They look confident. They look like they look like a team that are 18 points clear at the top of the table and about to reach the last 16 of the last 8 of the Champions League for the first time. So they've looked exactly as what they are. If it looks like a dog, it is a dog.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. With only a few seconds left in the second leg, Napoli still having possession. And Ndombele doing well to ride the challenge of a few Frankfurt players, drifted out brilliantly in the end to the far side. Even the substitutes that have come on have looked so comfortable, not just the starting 11 from Napoli, and a bit of passing between Anguissa and Di Lorenzo, enough for Anthony Taylor to blow for the full-time whistle. An imperious Napoli in the end win 3-0 on the night, 5-0 on aggregate, and earn their first appearance in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. A brace from Victor Osimhen, Piotr Zielinski from the spot to all but solidify their progression into the final 8. Frankfurt bow out of the competition, but Napoli look extremely fierce. Napoli 3, Frankfurt 0.